Sup fellas, this is Algo. And let me start this video by asking you this. What comes to your mind when you think of your favorite Japanese JRPG? I know a lot of you degenerates will instantly think of anime series, because I did, but for the rest of the audience that already knows the answers as it's in the title of this video, it will be their memorable and iconic soundtracks. JRPGs are known for having orchestral sounding scores with recognizable and distinct melodies, often having these heroic and bombastic themes. So, when we talk about epic sounding video game soundtracks, one of the most popular examples will be the songs from The Legend of Zelda. While the music from this franchise may vary in tone from game to game, it's undeniable that this franchise has some of the most memorable video game songs on the ranks of Mario or Tetris. So, naturally, a few years ago, when Breath of the Wild was announced, and when one of the hypest video game trailers ever created dropped, with this amazing epic orchestral song that played on it, everyone expected the game to have an equally epic and bombastic score playing through every single minute of your adventure in this open world at Hyrule. But what we got sounded more like... yeah. And before you start disliking this video, I'm not saying that the Breath of the Wild soundtrack is bad. It's just that, just like many other people, I personally didn't like or appreciated it that much. You will always hear critics and fans alike saying that despite not being the traditional Zelda soundtrack, it's still a great one on a technical level as well as one that fits this post-apocalyptic setting. But man, despite being told that and respecting their risky decision to use this new kind of soundtrack for a franchise that is known for its music, I could not help but want the epic orchestral score like the one in the trailer. And deep inside, I kept believing that the game would have been a much better experience with something more akin to that. Alright, so fast forward to the start of 2019. MiHoYo, a Chinese video game company, releases a trailer for their new upcoming game, Genshin Impact. Considering that this was an open-world game that will run on PC, consoles, and mobile devices, while having the production values and graphical capabilities of AAA games, this was a pretty big technical achievement, not to mention free-to-play, with gacha elements. All of these things were quite impressive on their own. However, up until the time of release, people were more interested in other aspects of the game, particularly its species similarity to Breath of the Wild. Considering the track record of Chinese companies creating terrible quality ripoffs of shows and video games, most people just disregarded this as a shameless and soulless Breath of the Wild clone. In fact, these similarities were so controversial that the company received quite a lot of backlash, even getting to the point of angering a Chinese man, leading him to commit perhaps the most ineffective but hilarious ways of protesting: breaking your own stuff that you already paid for. Good job there, buddy. At the end of the day, the controversy and our friend over here did nothing but bring even more attention towards the game, and put in a lot of people's radars when it wasn't there before. Once it was released, everyone started playing the game, even people that have never touched a gacha game in their lives before. And while I decided I will eventually give it a try, I really wasn't in a rush to pick it up. Until suddenly, a particular video got recommended to me on YouTube. It was called Producing the Sounds of Liyue, Genshin Impact Behind the Scenes. Up to this point, MiHoYo only had experience in relatively small mobile games, so I wasn't expecting to see them going the extra mile and using a live orchestra, something that is quite expensive and takes a lot of effort to plan and produce. It definitely caught my curiosity enough to make me want to click on the video, and to me this, well, just seemed like a standard orchestration with a bit of a slightly oriental sound going on, until it got to this particular part of the song. The moment I heard this and realized that this was a soundtrack where they were going all in with traditional Chinese instruments, which is pretty uncommon and something quite bold, I instantly knew that this had the potential to be a lot more than just some soulless Breath of the Wild clone, and all of my misconceptions and low expectations for this game turned into excitement to start playing it, because this was enough to know that I was in for a ride. I mean, the thought of playing through a Breath of the Wild-like experience and hearing this bombastic kind of soundtrack while I went on an adventure was everything I wanted from that game. So watching this video made me instantly want to download Genshin Impact. Hell, I didn't even finish listening to the songs of the video because I wanted to experience the full version of them for the first time in whatever amazing situation the game was saving them for. Otherwise, it would feel like a musical spoiler. I booted the game pretty late at night and was greeted with a mystical, soothing singing voice, accompanied with heaven-like visuals. As someone that grew up with games with iconic title screens like Kingdom Hearts, I live for things like this. I kept staring at the screen for a while the game was updating. I realized that it will take some time to download with my shitty third world dial-up internet, so I left it there overnight so I could play the next day in the morning. And so, the next day when I opened the game, I realized that something was different in the title screen. The music sounded a lot more upbeat and adventurous, and the visual had changed from night to day. That's when I realized that this title screen changes completely according to the time of the day you're playing it. How cool of a detail is that? I know it's a very small presentation detail, but I believe that things like this let you know how much passion the people behind this have for their creation. And this passion is transmitted to the players and can go a long way in creating a memorable game. So I went ahead and started playing. And just as I expected, the game was pretty fun. You could tell that it was heavily inspired by Breath of the Wild, but it had more than enough unique elements and differences that made it its own unique game. The game lacks the level of polish that Zelda has and can be rough around the edges, but considering it's free, the first attempt of this company to make a game of such a scale, and one game that will get many further improvements in the future, I think it's pretty understandable. I would love to make a video analyzing its own artistic and visual identity in the future, but for now let's just focus on the soundtrack that, by the way, was pretty damn good. And also one with a lot of variety. For example, the first region has a classic medieval fantasy music with both bombastic battle songs as well as whimsical sounding music, while the second, and best one, has these Chinese-inspired sounds like the one from the YouTube video I mentioned before. For the majority of the game, the music will be mainly divided in tracks that play when exploring towns and wilderness with either upbeat and carefree tones or very relaxing and mystical sounds. The other kind of music will be the battle songs that usually play whenever you run into a group of enemies and get into a combat situation. These two types of songs have a very high contrast, since you go from the most relaxing and soothing tracks to these intense musical explosions. And speaking of that, the battle music in this game sounds so good. I'm not one to throw the word epic around too much, kinda, but damn, this is the definition of epic sounding music. They have some beautiful build-ups, these incredibly distinct, mystical and fantastic sounds on top of the fast rhythm ready to pump you up for a fight. All in all, it makes the big fights in Genshin Impact such a nice treat and really makes you feel like you are this traveler in another world involved in this epic and intense magical adventure. However, not everything is as good as it sounds, because it's in the lack of polish that I mentioned before that some of the problems that I have with its music start showing up. So let me give you a practical example of what I mean. Let's say you've been playing Genshin Impact for a while today. You finished all your daily bosses, daily missions, and basically got more than enough action for today. So you decide to relax for a little and focus on the more laid-back side that this game provides, like collecting materials like flowers or minerals. It's a great time to peacefully appreciate the calm and moody music that perfectly fit the visuals of this game. Feels so nice to just wind down and get lost in this beautiful atmosphere that this game provides, all while admiring the unique landscapes and mystical... wait, What is that? Oh, okay. So apparently I made the mistake of walking near some shilly enemies. And oh, well, hey, look, it's the ultra epic and bombastic song I've heard quite a few times already today. Well, that's a bit annoying, but it's fine. I'll just ignore it and walk right past them. Okay, so that interrupted the relaxed atmosphere for a moment, but now the peace is here again. There are enemies in the distance, but this time you make an effort to avoid passing near them. It's extra work, but it's all worth it in order to be able to keep hearing the nice, mystical music that was amazingly composed to create this beautiful experience. Okay, what the hell is it now? I decide to look around for whoever the hell triggered the music to no avail until I remember that there is a slime type enemy that hides among the plants and can be particularly hard to find sometimes, but I am really not in the mood to just fight it, so I decide to ignore it. However, the materials I was looking for were just around here, so I paused the game to get a breather and stop the music while shaking the map again, but the music doesn't seem to be stopping. The incredibly intense battle music just keeps playing while on the pause menu, and I still don't find the damn thing. There is no escape from this torture and I'm on my fucking limit. So I go ahead and close the game before I get a stroke and die. So yeah, in the end, what was supposed to be a relaxing experience ended up being a lot more stressful than even the hardest and most intense battle in the game without any of the fun. This also isn't just something that happens to me or to a few players in particular. If the YouTube comments in every single Genshin battle team are something to go by, you can tell that this is something that happens to everyone, and it can get really damn annoying in the long term.
Oh wow! That is relatable!
And hey, remember how I mentioned how I didn't finish listening to the song on the video because I wanted the first time I heard the entirety of it to be in whatever special moment the game had saved for it? Well, that didn't even matter because the first time I heard it in the game was when I was trying to find one of those damn hidden slimes as well. So, considering the huge contrast between the exploring and battle themes, in a lot of cases, the battle music in this game can be a complete mood killer. A similar example of this in another game will be in a DS survival horror game I loved as a teen called Dementium. This game had this pretty creepy and eerie atmosphere all the time. It was surprisingly well made for a DS game, and it was basically the closest you could get to a first-person Silent Hill. One thing I liked a lot about it was how the enemies would spook the shit out of you out of nowhere. You could just be walking around the halls of the creepy world and suddenly some demonic looking motherfucker will just run full speed at you. It made me drop my DS more times than a lot, and constantly kept me on the edge of my seat because I knew that at any time I could get ambushed by these creepy bastards without any warning. This gave the game this incredibly tense and scary mood from start to finish. The sequel, however, it kinda went for a more action-oriented direction for some reason, and you could easily tell, not only because of the gameplay, but also because of the presentation. One big annoying example was how, unlike the previous game, the sequel will play this horrid battle theme whenever there were enemies nearby that will completely kill the mood of the game and will not stop playing until you kill every enemy in the zone, also killing the horror in the process. In games like Genshin, something like this isn't just an issue because it's a mood killer, but also because hearing this music feels like the game is forcing you to get into a fight whether you want it or not. It almost feels like one of the most infamous parts of turn-based JRPGs, random fight encounters, an issue that has plagued this genre since the very beginnings. And speaking of turn-based JRPGs, there is another smaller musical problem that a very popular game of this genre and Genshin Impact share. Alright, so if anyone is gonna dislike this video for criticizing something they love, this section is probably where it happens. Last Surprise, the battle theme of Persona 5, is a song that is regarded by many to be one of the best JRPG themes of the last decade. It fits the suave and stylish visuals of the game, the lyrics fit the theme of the story, the upbeat tone really gets you in the mood for a fight, and overall it's just a really damn good song. However, after hearing this song over and over in a game that lasts so many hours, there is a problem that starts creeping in, and that will be the timing of the chorus with the action happening on the screen. Let me explain. Music for shows and movies tend to have scores with big contrasted sections that separate each other by having a strong use of tension and release. This is basically a kind of musical build-up used as a way to create expectations, unrest, anxiety, and most important, anticipation for what is about to come. Just for the tension to peak in musical explosions that dissolve and release in very pleasant ways. Synchronizing the highest and lowest sections of a song according to what is happening on a scene can lead to impactful, highly climatic, and memorable moments. Last Surprise particularly has an amazing release of tension in the you'll never see it coming part. Honestly, there are few things as nice as timing an all-out attack just right so it plays exactly at the time of the chorus. So when it works really well. The problem is what happens when it doesn't. This song is also a prime example of why timing music in video games is so hard, because since movies don't incorporate the element of interactivity, the timing of the songs and what is happening on the screen is entirely up to the artists and directors, but for video games it's all up to the players and the situation they put themselves into. So when you create a battle theme with highs and lows that are so highly contrasted, just like you would with the soundtrack for a movie, you end up creating an experience that can feel lackluster whenever the music doesn't match the action happening on the screen. A similar situation happens in Genshin Impact's battle themes as well. The composer for this game has a lot more experience working for shows and movies than video games, so it's no surprise that most Genshin songs are very cinematic sounding with highly contrasted sections that often have very high tension breaking points. This game also has a lot of fights that are quite short, so you're often left feeling like you interrupted the song before it got to the quote-unquote good part, if you finish a fight quickly. I noticed these similarities because of a great music analysis video for Genshin Impact by Moukala, where he mentioned a few similarities from one of the Genshin battle themes with Last Surprise in their introductory sections. And also, in another video of his, he mentions the similarities from Last Surprise's intro with Giorno's theme. This theme in particular happens to have a chorus that is so iconic that just uploading that particular section of the song was enough to get more than 20 million views on YouTube. Nice said it, by the way. But that's all because that part of the song is used exclusively for some of the hypest moments of the show, timing it perfectly with great moments like every classic Jojo beatdown. And that's exactly why it's the kind of song that works much better for a show than it would for a video game. In short, both the battle themes in Genshin Impact as well as Last Surprise are amazing songs, but sadly, because of the context in how and when they are played, they can rarely achieve their full potential. They sacrifice consistency for something that works really damn well sometimes, but can end up falling flat quite often. So, as I was thinking about these issues, I also started thinking about how other games will avoid these problems. First, I thought of games that had songs that play when you fight an enemy while also having orchestral soundtracks, similar to Genshin, and the amazing work of Yoko Shimomura from Kingdom Hearts came to mind. For example, the battle theme for the final world is a song that lasts half as much as the average Genshin theme and only takes half a minute to get to the highest part of the song, and then basically loops the entire thing a few times. Meaning that you can always get to experience the entirety of that song, and even if you don't, the contrast between the chorus and the bridges isn't big enough for there to be a noticeable problem if the fights were to end too early. But then I realized that maybe I shouldn't take the approach of comparing it with games with similar sounding music, but instead with games that shared similarities in every other aspect but the style of the music. And what better game for that than the one that inspired it all in the first place? Like I mentioned before, I wasn't exactly a big fan of Breath of the Wild's musical philosophy. It went for the bold approach of trying music that was pretty minimalistic, a lot quieter, more atmospheric, and less melody based. It didn't have the big sounding scores that a game like Genshin has, but looking back on these two games and comparing each other, I've started to find some new appreciation for Zelda's musical decisions. Mostly because they were made with a much better understanding on how to maintain the mood of the game with its music, as well as always keeping player experience in mind. And this is thanks to the fact that the minimalistic music isn't just exclusive to the peaceful moments of the game. In Zelda, even battles and any other types of songs have a very similar kind of sound. Plus, having nothing but just a few instruments playing for the first seconds of the battle themes makes the transition feel a lot more natural. And unlike Genshin's music, the more intense fight themes are saved for less common and more dangerous enemies like the Linnell and the Guardian. Their themes play a lot less often, so they don't break the mood of the game as much, and when they do, it isn't in an annoying way, but instead as a way to convey the intensity and risk of a fight of such a magnitude. Unlike, let's say, having some of the most intense songs playing Genshin Impact when you encounter some shitty slimes. The more intense Zelda battle themes are mood killers, but on purpose and in great ways. So that's one part of the problem, but how does Breath of the Wild handle the song structure and combat timing problem? Well, actually, Zelda's battle theme is a lot similar to Genshin's songs in terms of structure. Just like Genshin, it has highly contrasted sections and this slight sense of build-up throughout its entirety, meaning that the song sounds like this at first, and after a while it changes to this. However, there are a few key differences that make it work slightly better for your average fight. And that's because
the minimalist start
with just a few instruments isn't your standard melody-driven section. It's one that can end at any second without feeling like you interrupted the build-up to something more intense, even though that's exactly what is happening. But when it does get to the next section, you hear a whole new side to this song, one that went all out with the contrast and becomes a lot more intense and dangerous, feeling for harder and longer fights. It almost feels like you're hearing a completely different song and not so much just the next section that the track was leading you to from the start, which
somewhat solves the whole build-up issue.
I don't think it's a perfect battle song, and you could argue that some of the issues I mentioned before are present here to an extent as well. But my point is that there is another level of polish compared to Genshin, and I feel like that's thanks to the developers having the player experience in mind when composing this. The structural similarities from these songs make me think that the Genshin devs took inspiration from Breath of the Wild, even in the part that seemed the most different on a superficial level, the music. I mean, you can tell that they experimented with using pretty similar music by hearing one of the songs for the domains. But it seems like they only took inspiration without taking things like optimal game experience in mind, unlike the composers from Breath of the Wild that already have vast experience in making music for video games. It's sad how after a while I just started turning down the volume of the game completely because of these issues, which is such a disservice to the amazing soundtrack that this game has, and it taints the experience that the people behind this so painstakingly created.
包括我有一些同事，我们排练之后也会聊到，大家也会觉得，确实这个整个音乐的代入感是非常强的。抛开那些气势磅礴的战斗音乐，或者是比较大场面的一些乐段不说，那些精致的乐段反而是更加触动到我们心里某一些的地方。
But I don't want to be completely pessimistic about this. With the recently released Dragons by region, I don't see a lot of the previous issues with the new battle theme here, and I find it a lot more functional while also being pretty damn good. I don't know if this was the composer learning from previous experiences or simply trying something a bit different, but either way, it's a great step on the right direction. And hey, MiHoYo clearly listens to the feedback of the fans and even asks the player directly for it every month. So it's clear that they are highly interested in improving the game in every possible way. Just small things like not playing the combat music for every single small fight and making each battle song play according to the enemy you're fighting are pretty simple fixes that I hope they will implement in the future. And as an aside, despite my complaints, the developers of Genshin did put a lot of effort into the musical experience by incorporating things like dynamic music, so even if the previous issues continue in the future updates, I'm left with nothing but massive positive expectations for the future of the music on this game, and I'm still looking forward to the music in the next regions. I can see that the criticism made in this video may seem like some long, annoying nitpicks for some, and I think that's fair. But please keep in mind that these are criticisms born from the love I feel for this game, and for its music, and for all the games that I used as examples in this video. Except maybe Dementium II. After all, music is one of the most important and sometimes underrated part about video games, and I'm truly glad that I can talk about this topic in such detail, even if it was in a bit of a negative light. Alright, so on that point, I think it's time to finally finish this long-ass video. It's the first one I decided to make, so if you're one of the 10 people that got this in the recommendation and actually stuck to the end of the video, then honestly, thank you so much. I know it was a mess at times, the mic quality is kinda bad, and I don't have the best English pronunciation yet, but as my first video, I'm seeing this as more of a learning experience than anything else. So please look forward to my next videos that will hopefully not be nearly as shit as this one. Alright, so yeah, that will be all. Thank you, please subscribe, all that stuff, ring the bell, comment, dislike it if you hated this crap, etc. I don't know. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.